Yeah, so it's 22 degrees outside and we're supposed to be getting 9 inches of snow today. I think I'm going to be staying inside for a bit. So, you know, what better thing to do than to work on my fishing kayak? I've been working on building this sonar pod for my Feelfree lure and I'm really happy with how it turned out. So I thought I'd make a quick how-to on how to build your own. It's got its own master switch that turns everything on and off. I've got a switch to power on the fish finder, as well as a power switch to power up this USB port so I can charge up stuff like my GoPro and my phone. So let's take a look. Okay, before getting started, I wanted to go through a few of the different odds and ends that you're going to need in order to get this project done. I'm also going to list this stuff down in the description below, but in case you're not familiar, I'm just going to go through everything really quickly. So you're going to need some duct tape, rubber gloves if you want to keep your hands clean, some waterproof sealant of some sort. I like this Loctite stuff. I also use some of this DAP Ultra Clear because I was using it in some spots where I didn't want white to show. I'm sure this comes in clear as well, but I just mistakenly bought the white stuff. You're going to need some mineral spirits in order to clean your hands up if you get messy. I have a stepped drill bit set here, which comes in really handy if you don't have a hole saw. I have a drill, some drill bits, and then I needed a Dremel tool in order to cut out a couple shapes. Then I used various cable clamps and cable management, as well as zip ties in order to tie everything up. And then these various tools. So I needed a wire cutter to cut some wire. I needed this wire stripping tool, which came in super handy, and it makes stripping wire a lot easier than, you know, your generic one. But if you don't have the budget for this, you can always get by with a regular wire stripper. Then I used this Channel Locks crimping tool. I used a crescent wrench because I didn't have the proper wrench size in order to clamp down on some of these smaller nuts. I needed a screwdriver and then a measuring square. Next up, I used this stainless steel 1.5" hinge for my sonar pod, so it doesn't just open from the top. I can actually open it up with a hinge. It comes in pretty handy. And then I don't know if this is going to work the same way for you as it did for me, but I use these 8x32 screws. I didn't actually use this size, I had a smaller size, but you're going to need that to mount your fish finder to your mount. I have a ram mount and my other screws that I bought were a little bit too big. So with that, the remainder, or like 90% of the screws I used, were these 10x32 by 3/4 inch long screws. They come with a Phillips head, which is really handy, and the length was really good for what I needed it for. And then I used some 3/16 inner diameter fender washers to clamp down on the sonar or the transducer bracket. And then I stopped at Ace Hardware and got some odds and ends. So I got these thinner locking nylon lock nuts, some rubber washers, and these other stainless steel washers. So next up, you're going to need some scrap cardboard. As you can see, I cut this shape out, which I used on the sonar pod, and I just cut out a old Amazon box or whatever I had lying around. You'll need a Scotty track mount if you mount your fish finder the same way that I did. You're going to need some 16 gauge wire or similar. You're going to need some switches. Then you're going to need some terminal connectors. I also have some other terminal connectors. I use these Haystronica heat shrink spade connectors. I like these a lot better than the Harbor Freight ones. However, you are going to use some of these, I don't know what these types are called, the circle connectors. You will need to use those in a couple spots So you will need something similar. So you could get by with just this terminal connectors assortment, or you can get this as well, but you're going to have to buy a couple extra pieces. Then you're also going to need a car blade fuse set, and then I painted some stuff, so I just used some Rust-Oleum fast drying indoor outdoor, and then I clear coated with this Rust-Oleum matte clear enamel. Another thing I used, I put some I finished off my battery compartment area with some leftover foam I had lying around to prevent the battery from moving too much. Lastly, the most important piece you're going to need is a Garmin Echomap UHD 93SV plus transducer. I got mine from West Marine, but I also saw that there was a good deal going on between West Marine and Bass Pro Shops. So far, it seems pretty awesome, but until I take it out in the water, I'm not going to be able to make a full assessment on it. One thing I forgot to add to my list was this blade fuse block. You're going to need it in order to protect your battery in case there's any shorts. And then you're going to also need a USB plug or similar. One thing I also wanted to touch on was this Gorilla waterproof patch and seal. I wanted to use this as an extra form of protection or water sealing for my sonar pod, where I drill holes where water is going to be directly touching, but it backfired on me. So I talked to some people on the Feelfree Lure kayak owners group, and basically what they said was the stainless steel has some tin and nickel in it, and then this Gorilla patch and seal had a chemical reaction with it. So what it ended up doing was it didn't ruin my seal between the washer, nut, and bolt on the inside where it touches the sonar pod bracket, but what it did was on the top side it caused a bunch of cracking and issues. So I would really not recommend getting this unless you're going to use some type of non-stainless steel nut and washer, which by then, like, what's the point, because you're going to have rusting going on and all that type of corrosion. So I would not recommend this, but you'll see in my video that I did try to use it, and you'll see that I did run into some issues along the way. So without further ado, let's get to it. Alright, so for starters, I would like to put a voltmeter here on my sonar pod, but as you can see from the inside, Feelfree put a storage compartment here where you can put extra cables and stuff like that for your fish finder. All that extra stuff goes in here, but I don't really intend on having everything stuffed in here, so I'm going to cut a square out to give me a small access panel to be able to access back where the voltmeter will go. So to begin, I'm going to take some measurements of the this square here. So I'm seeing 4.5 inches by 5-ish inches. So you'll want to use some spare cardboard. So I've got lots of stuff lying around after I've got a lot of spare stuff laying around from Amazon. So I'm going to use this spare cardboard. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go with a 3-inch by 3.5 inch cutout here, which will give me plenty of room to access where I'm going to drill my hole. Now you don't have to make your stuff perfectly square. I'm just being a little OCD because I can, and I've got this square to do so. Probably go back and double check that since I didn't do Do that on this side. Okay, so that was off a little bit. Alright, so now I've got my square shape drawn out, and I'm going to cut that out. Alright, and here we go. I've got my piece cut out. You'll notice I have some rounded edges, so what I did was I'm going to be using the Scotty track on top of the fish finder here, and so I used that rounded edge and traced it out after I cut out my square, just to get some nicer rounder edges. So next up, I'm going to trace this out on the inside to make my access panel. Doesn't have to be perfect, but just do the best job you can so that you can be proud of the work you did. Alright, so I don't know if the camera picks that up very good, but I've got my cutout right here. What I'm going to do now is get a Dremel and Dremel that out. If you don't have a Dremel tool, you could probably use a razor or something like that to cut it out as well. Alright, and here's the finished product. You know, it's not exact, it's not perfect, but it'll get the job done. It gets me access back here, which is where I wanted to put the voltmeter in the first place. So yeah, it's pretty good. I'm pretty happy with it. If I want to, I might come back later and clean up these edges even a little bit more. I hit it up with the sander, but it's still kind of a little messy, so we'll see. But anyways, the next step would be to draw out and drill out my voltmeter spot. So I've got my voltmeter here, and it comes with this screw lock on the back, and I'm going to use that as my tracing point for where I'm going to drill my hole. So here we go. I ended up drawing two circles. The top one here, I forgot the voltmeter has a little bit of a lip, so if I would have drilled out the hole up higher, the voltmeter would have probably went over this lip, which would have looked really terrible, and I would have probably been kicking myself for that. So I'm going to drill it a little bit lower. I centered it a little bit better, and see how that turns out. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to drill a small pilot hole, just to give my bigger drill a reference point when I'm drilling through. All right, there's my reference hole. do a quick double check, make sure everything's lining up okay. Still got to go a little ways to go. I do got to move it a little bit to the right here. Still going all right. Keep on digging. See how that looks. Still got to keep going. All right. It's making me a little nervous. I'm drilling all this hole out. Oh, I'm cutting her a little close on the top here. That's got to do it. I said I didn't want to get a lip, and then I'm going to end up having a little bit of a lip anyways because I just miscalculated my drill hole, but that's all right. So yeah, oh, that'll fit pretty good. Once I get her in there, do a little bit of cleanup, but that'll be nice sitting there. All right, guys, and here's the end product that I ended up with. My hole ended up being a little higher than I would have liked, but what are you gonna do? You only got one shot, and it's still gonna work, so I'm happy with it. And then just one thing to note, with the washer, if you do get this up higher, you're gonna wanna trim one edge down so it sits flush up against the upper ridge here. As you can see, I made a mistake on the first attempt, and I made a new, I clipped this off a second time just to get it to line up right. So I'm just going to do another test fit just to make sure it's all good and ready to go for the next step. Alright, there we go. Not perfectly centered, but I'm happy with it. Okay, so next up, what I'm going to do is I've got this USB charging port. What I think I'm going to do is I'm going to put it right here. And then on the right here, I'm going to have two toggle switches, one for my fish finder and one for my charging port. Then somewhere else, I'm going to make a master switch to turn everything on, so I'm not constantly draining battery if I don't need to. So I'm going to trace this out and see how that turns out. All right, we've got the hole here. It looks pretty nice. So I'm going to do a quick test fit. Nice. Alright, so got my washer here. I'm just going to thread it on. It's always easy with the easy to access spots. It's always a lot more complicated and stressful when it's a tight fit, you know. Alright, it's a nice snug, mostly waterproof setup. Okay, so like I said, now I'm going to put some on-off switches, which I'm going to use to control my fish finder and my USB charger here. Alright, so I'm literally just going to eyeball this and see how we turn out. Start that one there. Start this one about here. Okay, so those are pretty good spots. What do we got to work with here? Quite a bit larger, okay. Oh, nice. It's like the right size. And then it's got to be just a hair larger. All right. Not bad. So when this is lit up, I want it to tell me that it's on. So I'm going to have it facing down here. Beautiful. Get this other one in here. Also beautiful. Can obviously do a little bit of adjusting from the inside. There we go. We got our there we go, we got our on and off So I think I'm going to go with the left side's going to power the USB and the right side's going to power my fish finder. So now I just got to come up with a spot for my master switch. Alright, so what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to put my master switch somewhere around here so that I know for sure like I'm powering everything here back, because my fish finder is going to be here. All my cables are going to be running somewhere over here. I think I'm going to put my fuse block here to protect all the electronics. So it kind of makes sense to have it, you know, come through somewhere on this side. And yeah, so I said this side, I meant this side. So I think I'm going to go on the right side. I'm right-handed, makes sense to me. So I'm going to go right here. Throw that on-off switch right there. Cool. There you have it. So I've got all my electronics lined up. I've got my master switch, got my fish finder, and my USB, then my volt reading right here. So next I'm going to do the fuse block. So I'm going to put it right here because there's a little bit of a gap here, so if I have a bolt or anything, it's not going to rub on any wires or anything like that. I think I'm going to put my fuse block right here. I'm thinking it's going to work because there's two holes that go here, and it should line up pretty well on the inside for the wires not scraping on anything. And then I chose a four blade fuse block. I could have probably gotten away with a 2, but 4 just in case I ever decide to expand. Alright, so now that I have my holes drilled out, I'm gonna install the fuse block. Right now I'm using a 1.5 inch stainless steel machine screw. If I, in an ideal world, I would run probably 1 inch, but I don't have anything quite that short. I mean, I have some 3/4 inch, but they're just a hair too short. So I'm just going to get these screwed in for starters. And then I've got some stainless steel split lock washers, and then some nuts to go with that. I don't think you need to really gorilla tighten these down or anything, because this shouldn't really see the water or even come in contact with much, so I may just finger tighten them on. Okay, so now that we've got the fuse block installed, the next thing I want to install is a Scotty track mount on top of the Sonar pod, which I plan to use for my fish finder so that I can kind of adjust where and how close I'm running the Echomap on my Sonar pod. You know, I could go with the ram mount, which would go right here, which gives me freedom left, forward, and backwards, but this will give me even more freedom, being able to go even further forwards, obviously, or even slightly back if I need to. So one thing I noticed is that there's a little lip here on the Sonar pod, which kind of prevents this Scotty mount from laying flat. So what I was thinking I was going to do was I was going to just sand this down, but with the with the thickness of this, I'm a little afraid that if I sand on here, I might actually gouge a hole. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to do what I've seen on a few house remodel projects, where they kind of trace out a line here, and that then I'm gonna sand down on the actual Scotty mount, which should then kind of lay in here more flush, and then these screws will kind of bolt it all together a lot tighter. So here we go. What I'm gonna do is I want to go like right about here. So now I'm gonna offset it, kind of trace this shape out. Okay, so as you can see, it kind of creates a little bit of an arch. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna sand this down so it's more of an angle to try and match the shape of the sonar pod's angle. All right, here we go. This is my finished product. So I sanded that down. It's not quite a 45-degree angle, but I think it's enough that it's gonna lay in here flat. You know, I've obviously tested it on here and it lines up pretty decently. It's at least more centered. So I may spend a little bit more time perfecting it, but from here I'm gonna attach this track mount. So I'm gonna start making some marks and I'm gonna start drilling. Plan on using some 10 by 32 by 3/4 inch length machine screws, obviously stainless steel. They should fit in fairly flush within the sonar pod. So I'm gonna get the right drill bit and start drilling. Alright, so when I come back in here and screw this all together, I'm gonna have to get my fingers in there and tighten her up. Another thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna add some marine Loctite sealant inside when I put these screws on, so that everything stays waterproof. Alright, beautiful. Alright, so I'm gonna install the Loctite, just cut the tip off here, and I'm gonna apply it to each one of these screws to create a waterproof seal. I'm gonna put some on at the holes as well, just to really make sure it's waterproof. Most of this stuff can be purchased at your local hardware store. I got all this stuff at my local Ace Hardware. I'm going to put rubber washers on before a metal washer, because the rubber will create an additional barrier . For these ones on the angle, I'm not going to put a metal washer. I'm just going to use the rubber washer to create my barrier, because the metal washer will cause tension on it. So one thing to keep in mind is keep some mineral spirits on hand, because you might need them for any kind of mess you make with the marine sealant. I got some on my sonar pod here, so I'm going to clean it up because I got it all over my hands and all over everything, so I'm going to clean her up. Okay, so next up I'm going to install a hinge on here to make it an attached door. I've seen a lot of other Feelfree sonar pods with that hinge, which I think is a really great idea, so I'm going to install that on mine as well. Alright, so I've got my hinge here. I just got some stainless steel hinges from Home Depot. Comes with some stainless steel screws. I'm going to use those for now and see how she lines up. There we go, just like that. We've got a working hinge, so that's cool. Let's see how that works. Cool. Now the next hard part is, do I do the wiring or should I continue finishing up the sonar pod interior? I think what I'm going to do is probably start with some wiring. Alright, so one from a past project I had, I have some cable management clips which use 3M tape on the underside, and they will easily clamp down wires. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use that as my cable management for my fuse block. It's going to work out great, and I'm pretty happy that I found that. Awesome. And then I also have my master switches, which is down here, and then further along I have my voltmeter, which is up here. So I think for my master switch I'm just going to use the existing path. I'll just come out and through. For the voltmeter, I think what I'll do is I have a few screws left over from the hinges, because it comes as a 2-pack and I'm not going to use the second one, and I can always get a different screw. So I think what I'll do is, I've got the cable clamps. I'm gonna I'll probably put a screw in and get my cable path started over here so it's a little bit cleaner. Follow this pathway. Maybe I'll use 2 screws even, and just have one designated pathway. This can go here, and then go here. Cool. And one more screw. So what I use is this 100-piece standard car blade fuse set. So the USB charger, I don't really anticipate going above 3 amps, but to be safe, I'll probably put in a 5 amp. And then for my fish finder, it runs at about 1.5 amp hours. So what I'll do is I'm going to put a 2 amp in there. If I have issues, I'll throw the 3 amp in there after the fact. But this is really nice and handy. It's pretty cheap, and it comes with a bunch, so I have an ample supply. Okay, so for the first bit of wiring I'm going to bring power from my battery over to my master switch, which is located right here. I'm going to give myself a little bit of extra to compensate for running this path along here that I made. Something like that's going to work. So I got this nice Klein Catapult 1163W line cutting tool, and it comes in pretty handy for any electrical work you're looking to do. I'm just doing this as a hobby, but I would highly recommend it. It's well worth the cost. Crimping tool. I have a snap-on or a channel locks crimping tool. Comes in really handy. This one's got a really nice insulated and non-insulated crimper, so it makes crimping quite easy. Alright, that's nice and snug. because that's not going anywhere. Okay, next I gotta send power from the master switch to the fuse box, which should then provide power to the rest of my auxiliary items, you know, my charger and my fish finder. So I'm going to get that measured up and then install that one next. And then to go to the fuse block, I'm going to need to use a different connector. So I got this terminal connector assortment from Harbor Freight. So for the ring terminal, we're going with number 10. Should fit on there a little bit more snug. Oh yeah, look at that, that's perfect. Yeah, that ain't going anywhere. Nice. So now I'm going to plug this one into the middle power cable. My switch is not sticking very well, so I might have to add some additional caulk or sealant to keep it from popping out like that on me. Okay. And we're going to run this through the cable wires. Throw it on right here. Beautiful. Probably a little bit excessive, but that'll get the job done. And then I'm going to need to also plug in my voltmeter to the same spot. So, because I want to know what power I'm running without going onto the fuse block. That's not necessary. I'm not going to be turning on a different button just to know what the volts are on this thing. So let me set that up real quick. Again, going silver as hot, copper or brass colored as the black ground cable. That can go here. Actually, go hot first, and then we'll go with the voltmeter. Okay, and then I've got my crescent here. Okay, so now that I've gotten the screw started, I'm going to finish this up. Okay, so now that I've got my master power set up, what I'm going to do is plug in the negatives just to verify that my power is all set up properly, because if I have that set up right, when I turn on the on switch, I should be able to see volts coming from the voltmeter. So what I'm going to do is connect all the negatives together, which will then lead to the main negative over here connecting to the battery. So like before, I'm going to get some measurements figured out here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to tie them all together. So for every black cable, there'll be two coming together into one where it plugs in, minus like the first one over here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run these two together. Kind of try and twist them together to make as connected of a pair as you can. Then you're going to go up a size for the crimp. Okay. Okay, so one thing I wanted to note, guys, is there is this on the power cord of the Garmin. Let me see if I can get this to focus a little better for you. Alright, so on the power of the Garmin's, we've got a brown, blue, black, and red. So red and black are going to be your normal power, and then the brown and blue are only meant for NMEA 0183 devices. So I don't know what that is, and I don't really care to figure out what an NMEA 0183 device is. So you can just disregard those if you're not using them. But for this install, I'm only using the black and red because that's all I need. Now these three are going to all connect together at the same location. So that should do it. Now we'll do a quick test on all the cabling, make sure I did a good job. So theoretically, if I press the master switch, we've got voltage. Beautiful. So that's looking good. Now I can finish up the rest of the power cords that run to the remaining accessories. Alright, so because I've got all this extra cable from the fish finder, I'm actually going to try to tie it off so I can get some more room to work with. I don't think my fish finder is going to go any further than that, so I'm going to coil up the rest of it here. Okay, so next up, I'm gonna plug in the power for the fish finder because I've already got this cable ready, and then all I gotta do is provide power to it. All right, voila, just like that, everything should be connected. And I'll do a quick test before I clean up all my wires. So master switch, which I still need to glue down, on. As you can see, now my two other items I already had on the on position, I'll turn those off. When I turn USB on, should get some light over here, but it looks like I'm not. So I'll have to double check my cabling, make sure everything's connected good. Okay guys, so I figured out what my problem was. It ended up not being anything related to the physical USB connector itself. I should have looked at this a little bit harder, and I was plugging the positive and negative incorrectly. So on the USB, for whatever reason, the negative is actually silver colored and the positive is copper colored. Alright, so we're kind of getting close to the end of the build here. So next up I'm going to work on the transducer for the Garmin Echomap 93SV. That's a mouthful of words. And anyways, so what I've seen a lot of other Feelfree kayak owners do is on the underside here, because the 93SV has side view, if I just mounted the transducer, you know, directly onto here, mounted it directly to the sonar pod, that would work, but the side view may have issues with the hull being in the way on both sides. So what I'm going to do is kind of add a spacer to it so that I can get the transducer down a little bit lower. Now what I'm going to use is, it's called a Simpson strong tie. I found this at Home Depot in the, what do you call that? It's by like the house building materials area. I think it's made out of steel, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to mount it, and then I'm going to take it off and then paint it just so it doesn't rust and corrode too bad. This is a work in progress. We'll see how it turns out. If it doesn't turn out good, I may just end up taking this off, and I've seen some other guys build it with a cutting board. That's nice too. I just didn't really want to go that route personally. I like the cleanliness of a bracket. So I'm going to mount this and see how it goes. The reason why I'm also going with this bracket is because for the actual transducer mounting hardware, they show in the instructions that you can mount the transducer to a transom area on the back of a regular boat. So this part here would mount to the back of a boat. I don't know how that's turning out on the video, but then your transducer would be on this. Sorry, that's upside down. And you'll see it's got slots. So these slots will allow you to kind of go up and down. So my thoughts were, well, these lines, oh, they actually do line up. So I may end up using these. I may drill new holes, but either way, I can kind of move this up and down so that I have some adjustability for the height. And then I'm not stuck with, you know, a set height. If I don't need side view, for example, and I'm in shallow waters, I'd like to have the ability to pull up my transducer, where if I had a cutting board, you know, 3-inch block, I can't adjust that. So that's the reasoning for me. Obviously everybody has their own reasons. So first off, I'm going to get the transducer all put together. I really like how Garmin has everything in a bag within a bag within a bag. It's kind of, if this was like, it's very well organized, which makes it easy to know what goes with what. You know, all this came with this mounting hardware. This hardware came with this mount. So maybe that's how it is for all fish finders. I don't know. I bought my other fish finder used, so I don't have that as a reference point. Oh yeah, so it goes with the hardware. With that being said, You get a Phillips head screw with a star washer, which should kind of lock it all down. I'm going to be using that same, doing it in a star pattern just like I've done on all my other installations so far, just because I want to make sure I have even pressure everywhere. You could also get like, you get your drill out, set it to a set torque tightness. I just like doing the manual labor here sometimes. Alright, beautiful. So now Garmin has its mount on it, the transducer. It looks like so. The way it's going to mount onto this piece here is it's going to mount on kind of like this. You'll want to get this. What's nice is it's got the little stars inside there, so you can kind of, if you hit something, it'll bend up or get out of the way. The only thing is, I don't know on a piece of plastic if that's going to work out okay or not, if that's going to damage the sonar pod or not, but we'll see. Okay, that looks pretty nice. So I'm gonna get this. You know, I'm not gonna put that on yet, just for the sake that I'm going to mount this piece first. But it's also nice, it's got a nice little cable runner, so when I get this running through the sonar pod, I can run my cable here, which will keep it nice and tight. And then I intend to put one of the cable clamps on here also to just kind of keep it nice and tidy. Okay, so that's kind of how that looks. And now I'm going to get this out of the way, start doing the more difficult stuff. What's nice is this Simpson strong tie, it actually mounts up. Let's see, which way do I want to go with this thing? It lines up pretty well with the width of this entire sonar pod base. Unfortunately, sonar pod base isn't like perfectly square or flat. You can kind of feel there's a little bit of a triangle shape. So what I'm going to do is, after I mount this, I'll probably throw a little bit of caulk on here or some type of sealant in order to prevent water from getting in. I mean, you're going to do that at the holes as well, but just as an added barrier. So let's see. What I'm going to do, actually, I'm not going to go flush with the top here also. I'm going to go back a little bit just to kind of follow this flow and to give myself some additional room for cable run and all that stuff. So these holes I'm not going to adjust. I'm just going to drill them out, clamp it down. Okay, so I was able to find a different drill bit. This is an 11/64. Before that I had a 3/16, which I thought was just a hair too big. So I've got my spots marked. Start drilling. Okay. And obviously you're going to want to put some sealant on here. You don't want to just throw the screw in here and then go on the water. You're going to obviously leak water straight into the sonar pod, get all your electronics wet. That would be a big waste of everybody's time. All right. It's going to look kind of like that. It looks nice. That's how it looks on the inside. And cool. So my next step, I've got this drilled out. I'm actually going to paint this black because I would like it to match my whole sonar pod. I think that'll just be like a nice little added touch. I'm also going to paint the hinge that I did. All right, so here we go. I'm going to do my first coat. Okay, so while my first coat of paint is drying, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to really seal off my on-off switches. So if you recall, the main master switch as well as my switch that powers on the USB was kind of popping out every time I was plugging them in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to seal them off. So what I got was some JB weld. I'm going to reinstall these buttons with the JB weld, which should hopefully create a more permanent bond. I may go back later and on the inside run some sealant just to make sure it's truly waterproof. But yeah, I got this because I didn't like how the buttons were kept popping out, and I don't really want that when I'm on the water, you know, constantly dealing with that. So one thing that you're going to need for this install is you're going to need some aluminum foil, and then the bonder comes with a piece of wood for mixing the two. I'm going to use a cotton swab to swab the inside of this, as well as apply it to the on-off switches. And really that's all you need. You're going to want to apply the bonder to both surfaces. So you're going to put it on the inside, and then I'm going to also run it along this edge of the on-off switch. One thing you really want to do when you're dealing with plastic bonder, it's got these two different tubes that's going to squirt out into the aluminum foil. You really want to mix these well before you actually apply it. If you don't mix it well, it's not going to stick as well or create the bond that you really need, or plastic weld more or less. All right, so this can get a little bit messy at times, so I put on some gloves. I'm going to take this off. I already just checked it, and you can see it's already oozing out. So it comes from the factory pre-cut, so you don't have to deal with cutting off the ends. So it's really simple. You're just gonna squeeze out as much as you think you'll need. I'm gonna be a little liberal compared to my normal set self, because I really want these to stick well. So that's where I'm at. I'm pretty good with that. Now I'm gonna get my cotton swab, get some of this epoxy on here, and then I'm just gonna go in, apply a little bit all the way around the opening, and then I'm gonna add a little bit more. I'm gonna add it to my switch. Okay. And just like that. So the inside's got a nice ring inside, and then we got a nice ring on the outside. So now I'm just gonna push this in. All right, I'm gonna go get a paper towel to wipe that off a little bit. All right, guys, so here's my finished product on the bracket. I ended up painting 3 coats on this bad boy, and then 2 coats of clear enamel over the top of it. I think it turned out pretty good. There's a couple drips, but there you go, you can see the drips, but I don't really care. It's going to be under the water anyways, so it's a pretty minimal thing. So next up, just got to install it onto the sonar pod. All right, so next step, I'm going to apply some sealant around and on the hole. So I'm going to do that for the actual hole, and then I'm going to actually go around the hole with some of this DAP Ultra Clear all-purpose waterproof sealant. Probably overkill, but I would rather overkill it than underkill it and have water going inside. Okay, so now I'm going to actually run some additional clear on the inside. Just to really seal everything off. So that's how it looks on the inside, and then that's how it looks on the outside. Clean that up. Got a little bit of that sealant kind of oozing everywhere, so I'm going to clean that up, and then once this is all dry, I'm going to come back and spray it all with the waterproof patch and seal. Okay, so I've got my last step here of waterproofing. I'm going to spray some Gorilla waterproof patch and seal rubberized sealant inside my box just to really waterproof this area so that hopefully no water comes in by the battery. It might already be good to go with all the sealant I used previously, but I just want to err on the side of caution. Just really don't want water in there, obviously, as you can tell. Now I'm just going to cover up where the holes were, which is by the screws there. I just waited about, I don't know, 18 hours to take a look at my rubberized sealant, and I just wanted to show you guys. It looks like the Gorilla waterproof sealant isn't really the best for stainless steel. At least that's what it looks like. So, you know, you can see I sprayed this square here, and the plastic has no problem with the sealant, but where the washers, nut and screw come in, it looks like there's some cracking going on. So I don't know, I guess I wouldn't really recommend the waterproof patch and seal. Alright, so now we're on to the final step of installing the transducer. I'm going to continue to use those same 10 by 32 screws. I think I'm going to use a rubber washer and then a metal washer followed by the nylon lock washer, which is the same thing that came with the transducer mount from Garmin. And if you guys have any tips on the rubberized sealant, please do share. I've never really worked with it before, but I'm kind of bummed that the washers are all cracked, or like the sealant is all cracked by the washers. I'm gonna go to 3 since we're dealing with a rubber washer. Okay, see it's got some teeth. You kind of want to line it up with the hull so everything's flush. So it's going to take a little bit of fine tuning, more or less, to get the right tooth set up. That looks pretty straight to me, so I'm going to be good with that. Bolt, metal washer, rubber washer in the hole on the one side, and then your locking nut on this side. And you don't want to over crank the tightness, you just kind of want the threads to go through the nylon bit, and you also want it to sit in here flush. Set it to 1, which is the lightest tightness. Yeah, some flexibility, just like that. So if I hit something, it's going to move up on the teeth rather than bending out my bracket or ripping out a hole inside of my actual sonar pod. So the last step is actually just running the cabling through. So what's nice about Garmin is it comes with a little spot for your wire to go through up here if it works on this. I'm not totally sure it's gonna want to play nice. Oh, there we go. Alright, so one on alright. I don't want to make a 90-degree kink in the wire because that could damage the wires on the inside, so I'm going to leave it a little bit free like that. I'm going to run the wires through here and then into the sonar pod. Just trying to see what the best way to keep this all in line is. I actually bought some 1/4-inch cord clips they're adhesive, so I don't have to screw into the sonar pod. I'm gonna use those because they're, I mean, it's got an adhesive, so if it gets wet, maybe it'll fall off, but I'm okay with that because then I can just replace it. I'm also, what I think I'm gonna do is I'm gonna actually, I've seen some other people tape it right here so that I'm not actually messing with the kayaks, the hole where the sonar pod's supposed to go in. So I'm going to run that cable clip right here just to kind of help the cable go where it needs to. So I'm going to have it go right about here, kind of just help it flow. Hopefully I got the right size clip. Maybe it'll be a hair too small. Oh, that'll definitely hold it. Gonna have to line it up a little better, I guess. Maybe I'll go like this, and then I'll go up so that I'm protecting the cable in a couple different spots and keeping it nice and tidy. Yeah, so one like that. I'm happy with that. Hold that down for a few seconds just to kind of get a good bond. And I'm going to get another one. Okay, so now I'm going to get my rubber seal. Comes with the sonar pod. Get that all set up. Cool. So that goes in like that. A little bit of extra slack. I'm going to tape that down, and then I'm going to finish running through my cables. So, all right, and that makes a nice channel. So the cables run through the through this part of the sonar pod, and then the last bit is going to be just bundling it up and either leaving it in here or kind of trying to stuff it up here, but I don't have enough of a gap up in this space. So for now I'm going to just run the cable through the hole and figure it out as I go. For now I'm just going to bundle this up right here. I'm going to throw this cable through. Now this can rest in here next to the battery, on top of the battery, near the battery, either way, and that's not going to cause any problems. And close her on up. So I'm just going to run my cable stop through here and then put it all together. Sealed up. Nice. Took a little bit of elbow grease to get it in there. One thing I forgot to add, there's also this interference device. I think it's mostly just made out of lead. I'm not really sure. But it says to comply with regulations and reduce noise, install this ferrule bead on the transducer cable near the connector. So I'm near the connector. I'm going to install that here. Alright, I guess that's all you do. Just run that in there. And that's going to reduce noise. I don't know. And then got to install the actual transducer connector piece. Shows you cut it here, so I'm going to cut it. Alright, I guess it just goes like that. Alright, so now that's really it. Now I'm just going to pull back some of that slack and install the fish finder. I might actually run this inside of here because I don't really like how that looks on the outside. But alright, so last step is putting the Garmin 93SV on the Sonar pod. So first off, I'm going to put my track mount on, and what's nice about the mount here is that it has a few slots that you can slide the Garmin straight into it, so you can kind of take it and leave it. So it's very transportable, which is nice. So I'm going to slide this in here, loosen that up a little more so it goes on. Tighten this bad boy on, and then, like I was mentioning, you line up the bolts, slide it in, kind of goes into place for you. It's kind of nice. Get the angle you're looking for. I'm guessing on the water will be something like that. Got a few months to go before the ice melts here in Wisconsin. But either way, that's it. And then we're gonna plug it in on the back, red with red. There's a little slot here which aligns with the back of the fish finder. You'll feel it go in a little bit, which is all you need. Screw that on. These are all plastic parts, so you don't need to Gorilla tighten them on or anything like that. Just finger tight's good. Make a waterproof seal. Similarly, the orange for the transducer. There's a little line here. I'm going to try and line that up. There we go. Felt it go in. Screw that in. Oh, my little cat Pirelli decided to make her presence known. All right. That is it. So I still got to throw the battery in here, but here's the end result. I think it looks pretty sweet. It'll definitely, the 93SV, 9 inches is probably overkill for a fishing kayak, but at the same time, that'll give me plenty of view area to see where the fish are on the water. So, you know, if a boat can have it, I don't see why a fishing kayak can't either. So this is the end result. One thing I forgot to mention is there's a couple of holes right here that come from the factory when you buy a Sonar pod from Feelfree. And I plan on making another video showing how to do a plastic weld, filling up those holes to really make it watertight. And then another few weeks, I plan on doing another video on how to make a bracket right here for users who have a Feelfree with the overdrive already, where they don't want to drill another hole in their kayak. So this will seal up, and then it'll actually mount right here instead of mounting down here. So stay tuned. I'm going to do another video on that, but first I need to finish this one. Okay, so last step is installing it into the Sonar pod. So like I mentioned, I'm going to make another video to make a little bracket here, or spacer, so that the Sonar pod can sit on the overdrive mount rather than drilling a hole down there. And another thing is, I believe there's another, you can mount a bracket right here for the for this to latch on. I haven't done that yet. I'll do it eventually. So that's how it looks in the kayak. And then down here you'll see I've got just enough to get below the hull. Next up, I gotta take off the brackets. I picked up a Amped Outdoors battery. One of my buddies hooked me up with a 10% off deal, and the customer service there was pretty awesome. So I highly recommend Amped if you can afford one of their batteries. According to their website, I think it said for the Garmin Echomap it would last, I don't know, what did it say, like 12 hours, and I don't think I'm going to be on the water for that long ever. So this should get the job done. Another thing I added was some styrofoam inside of here so that the battery doesn't slide around too much. Anyways, I'm gonna throw the battery in and make sure everything works. So give me a second here. So I'm gonna put my SD card in here and let's see how this thing works. All right, so that just clicks in there like that. So first up, master switch. Nice, powered on. We've got voltage. Next up, just want to verify everything works. USB, awesome, lit up. All right, power on to my fish finder. Let's see how it goes. Oh man, it beeps, it's on, it has life. So I'm going to install this and then that'll be the finished product. Yeah, so either way, thanks for watching. I'm gonna have a couple other videos in the near future. I plan on doing a trolling motor build on my Feelfree lure. Also, I'm gonna have some just general tutorials on, you know, installing the spacer here, plastic welding. If there's anything else you need a tip on, you know, feel free to let me know, and if I can figure it out, I will DIY it for you to use to reference. But other than that, thanks for watching, and I'll see you out on the water.